Okay, we are going to open our workshop here for our meeting this morning, an open workshop for anybody to speak and bring stuff before our board here. So let's just get into it. Who would like to speak? Do you want to start, Chris? Or?
May I have the floor?
Absolutely.
This on? Let me turn that on so you can pick it up. I thank you, and I want to reiterate that I love this new format. I think that this is a very helpful thing in terms of getting the people's business done, and I think you guys have made a nice improvement here with this. Commissioner Pleshnik referenced this in his comments in the previous meeting, but last week I was alerted to, and I was in Columbus. I'm sure, as you know, I serve as the second vice president now of the CAAO. Too many acronyms. We had an executive and legislative meeting, and I was alerted to House Bill 15 that had been dropped by a representative out in Northwest Ohio. And when I returned on Monday, I reached out to Administrator Boyd and said, we need to discuss this as a county. I also reached out to our friends at Perry Schools. But House Bill 15 does a bunch of stuff. And it's really designed to try to jumpstart energy development in Ohio, which is, as you may be aware, is a priority for leadership in the House and Senate. And with good reason. When you're building data centers and drone factories in Pickaway County and all that, you need a lot of energy. Ohio is going to need a lot of energy in order to prosper over the next 100 years. We're going to need more power plants. We're going to need more power infrastructure. Nobody argues that point. However, there is one majorly misguided element within House Bill 15, which is it proposes to make generating plants tax exempt. So what that would mean for Lake County specifically is that Perry would become tax exempt. And there is some question as to what the status of East Lake's plant would be, because it's not technically a generating plant, so then we get into the weeds on how you define generation and whatnot. So that part I don't know. It may be it may fall into it, it may not. Obviously, if you remove a facility like Perry from the tax rolls here in Lake County, that creates a large hole where those taxes then have to be made up by the rest of us. So what I want to make clear to, for the press and everyone here is that, I immediately termed House Bill 15 the Destroy Lake County bill. And really specifically destroy Lake County taxpayers. We've all, we went through the reval last year. I know there's still, folks are unhappy. I'm equally unhappy, right? Nobody wants their taxes to go up. But I'm here to tell you that we removed Perry plant from the tax rolls. The rest of the county, the average citizens, all of us are going to have to pick up that tax slack. So everybody's taxes are going to go up. And then if you live in the Perry School District, you're crushed. They can't pass a big enough, what are they going to do? Pass a 30 mil levy? They won't be able to do it. So to say that this is a absolute massive threat to Lake County, our prosperity, our taxpayers, I can't possibly overstate it. So what I wanted to alert you to this bill, and it's gaining traction fast. We need to put some sort of a coalition together. I know that myself and Jason are working on within our different associations, the CCAO, the CAAO. We need to reach out to the other counties that have power plants that'll be affected. We need to reach out to the school districts that'll be affected around the state that are in these plants, because this is coal plants, gas plants, nuclear plants. We need to get together and start advocating for ourselves quickly in Columbus.
Do you have an idea forgive me, do you have an idea the dollar amount that we're talking about that Perry Nuclear Plant pays in taxes?
You know what, I should have brought it with me, but I could get that for you, the exact number.
Okay.
I have not looked at their bill that treasurers are and just sent them,
Okay.
a couple weeks ago. But what we did increase the value of the plant for 2024. I off the top of my head, I think it was about $50 million value increase, I think is about what we did.
50 million, 50.
50. That was the increase. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, the bill is foolhardy in this regard. When you have property tax on generating plants, okay, the owner of that plant is ultimately reimbursed by the grid operator, PMJ. They get the money back, their property taxes. PMJ passes that along to all the ratepayers, all the customers in 13 states. So that burden is spread around to every customer. What's that, a penny? A customer, a year, maybe not even that. So ultimately, it's not standing in the way of a power plant being able to be built, operate, and be profitable. It's just not. Because ultimately, the ratepayers end up paying for it anyway, right? I mean, First Energy builds all those, well, it's not, now it's Vistra. They will build all those costs into their rates. Those are approved by the PUCO, and we all pay it, right? But if you start shifting that burden now back to the locals, you remove it from the 13 states and all the customers in the grid, and you put it squarely on the backs of Lake County residents. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit back and say nothing and let that happen. So,
Mr. Auditor, to be clear, when we asked our state reps and state senators for property tax reform, the first bill they introduced in this legislative session was to exempt power plants from paying property taxes rather than give relief to grandpa, grandma, and residents. And to add insult to injury, they want to pay for this exemption for nuclear power plants, coal plants, oil plants on the backs of grandma and grandpa.
I think that's accurate, other than I don't know that it was the first bill that was dropped. I think Dave Thomas actually did sneak in a couple actual property reform bills before this one dropped. But to your point, it is not what people in Lake County or Ottawa County or any county that has a power plant, it's going to victimize a lot of people, right? It's just going to.
So to be clear, the property taxes they pay are spread back to another board or a panel. They get reimbursed for this. Correct?
Yeah.
And it gets spread over 13 states.
Correct.
And our state, or at least one state rep in Northwest Ohio, thinks that it's smarter to shift the entirety of those local property taxes from 13 states down to the specific county in which these generating plants are in, correct?
That would appear so, yes.
And that's not the only part of this, correct?
No, it's not.
This is just the generating plants are now tax exempt.
Right.
They also want to pass on, can you explain a little bit about the infrastructure?
So what
how they're
they want to
shifting
do to try to offset it, what their plan is then to increase the tax on the infrastructure, the transmission infrastructure. They think that this would be revenue neutral. So what they want to do is make the power plants themselves exempt and then increase the taxes that the utilities pay on the lines, the power poles, the substations, all the rest of it. What that would actually do is, if you think about it, it would shift those tax revenues to counties that have more infrastructure. So the winners, while Lake County is property taxes for average folks are going up, okay? Ratepayers see no change, okay? But then Cuyahoga County, Franklin County, they have more infrastructure. They're denser. They actually get the taxes that we aren't getting anymore for Perry. So there will be counties that will actually be winners. They will get more money. So again, Cuyahoga gets more money on the backs of Lake County residents.
So this gentleman in Northwest Ohio, who, after getting elected and having everyone in the state scream about property taxes, proposes that one half of these taxes that was being shouldered by 13 states should now come down to the individual county. The other tax should be shifting the revenue from the more rural counties to the more urban counties. Is that correct?
I don't know the gentleman. I would bet you my bottom dollar he did not write this bill.
Fair enough.
I believe this bill was written by interests that want to build power plants,
And
which I understand. We have a need for more power in the state. It's an admirable goal. There's one major problem that I have with this bill. Now, there may be others ultimately because it's so lengthy, I haven't actually managed to get through
over
all of
100
it.
pages.
But, and Jason has asked for an analysis from your association. We don't have that yet. We're so early in the, but I think that we have to be prepared with a coalition, with our friends at Perry Schools and the other school districts around the state that will be negatively impacted. The counties that have power plants that will be negatively impacted. We have to go down to Columbus and we have to make clear to them that, like, great, figure out a way to build more power infrastructure and more power plants in the state. We need it. We all agree with that. But making a for-profit entity, power generation is for profit. It's so profitable that Vistra bought, 4 nuclear plants from First Energy, or 4 power plants for like over $4 billion. Trust me, they're making money. So which is fine. We're all about making money, right? But they're not a nonprofit, right? They are a for-profit business, a major for-profit business. And the idea that we're going to make them tax exempt, and other states aren't doing that, to your point.
Well, churches, homeless shelters, nuclear power plants, they're all charities we need to subsidize. At least that's what the folks thought with HB 6 and all of our friends. And here we are again. Instead of doing something for our seniors and our residents and recognizing the incredibly oppressive burden the state has put on people through their property tax formula, we are going to propose an exemption for power plants. This is absolutely ridiculous, and this is why average Ohioans, this is why Lake County residents roll their eyes when they hear about the General Assembly. This is nonsensical. The fact that this was even proposed is nonsensical.
I agree, and I think that's what I wanted to bring up in this workshop, is that we have to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And we're going to have to educate the other members of the legislature of why this is a really bad idea.
Can we, for a second, educate Lake County residents for the full impact of what this
Well,
means as
that was why I wanted to do that.
And
That's
so
why I'm glad Chad is here.
My question
to talk
for you,
about it.
my question for you is this: it was an increase of $50 million, right? So
In
do you know
value.
approximately what the value of that plant is now? Do you know?
That's around $200 million.
$200 million, right? And this isn't just a Perry.
And by the way, that's just the real property, right? That's not the personal property, within the plant. I mean, the plant itself, in terms of an asset, is worth way more than that.
When it comes to the taxes, this isn't just a Perry Schools issue, right? Perry Schools obviously receives a large, it would take 30 or 40 mils. But as we've learned over the reevaluation and everything else, the tax levies across the county, whatever they may be, Auburn, Deepwood, Lakeland, Lake Tran, Adams Board, Senior, blah, 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 all right?
Yeah.
All of those cannot bring in any more dollars, right, than they were when they originally set, right? So if they were set bringing in $5 million, they're not bringing anything more. But that $5 million is spread across the county-wide value.
Right.
And if you take out a $200 million puzzle piece,
That value, the taxes on that value, gets shifted to everybody else.
correct. And that is on all of the county-wide tax levies.
Sure. Inside millage, the levies, all of it.
Not to mention then obviously what would happen to the Perry Schools.
I honestly, I will let our friends from Perry Schools talk about it. I think if they want to comment, but other than passing like a 30 mil levy, I don't know what they do.
Right.
So I mean, we've been screaming about more power generation for a while for future growth, and I understand that part of it, but I've never seen, even in a private industry, that, you know, they exempt the existing business that's been around for 30, 40, 50 years. And, you know, it's usually on new construction or new businesses coming in. I could probably understand something that, you know, a break to get that to happen, because hopefully you make it back when the power is generated and businesses are coming and people are working and getting jobs. But, you know, that's the cycle of how it should work. But I guess I'm just blown away that they would just want to exempt a current business.
And once again, it's a current business that is reimbursed. This is not a deterrent to building a power plant in this state.
No, not at all.
Okay? For business owners out there, we can assess if there's a cost to entry, if there's a cost to start a business. There's 6 costs, right? The 7th cost that gets reimbursed isn't considered, right? So this isn't going to improve the chances of an energy company even coming into the state to build a plant here.
But it will raise the stock of energy companies that already have plants here, because now their property tax bill goes to 0, which increases the value of their assets indefinitely. And we're all going to pay for it.
Sheriff, you like to chime in?
I guess if I could add to this effort, because it's not being mentioned, with that reduction in them paying taxes and the increase in property taxes will then adversely affect the rollover for law enforcement in communities, fire protection, and also rescue response. And because a lot of the police and fire services depend on levies, and the lack of the ability for people then to afford those levies because of the growth in their property taxes will affect those types of services. And I think they need to be added into this effort and bring in, for instance, the Fire Chiefs Association, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, the Ohio Chiefs of Police into this argument, and for them and their lobbyists to begin this effort. So I can at least pass this information on to the Buckeye State if you could get me this information, and I can get that moving sort of quickly.
Once we have the list of the counties that'll be affected, we'll get that to you. And if you can help rally those sheriffs and law enforcement in those counties, what I don't know is whether or not you'll get support from counties that don't have generating plants, right? What would their motivation be? It's not affecting them at all, right? So, and we don't know. Maybe they're willing to stand with you, which would be great, right? But at the same time, we may be on our own, right? It may just be the dozen counties that this is going to affect, and like I said, Cuyahoga probably gets more money out of this plan.
But to that point, I think that what you've touched on is the trickle down, right?
Yes.
Like, and I had this conversation with folks before on school boards. If we do a better job at the county level of managing our finances and not needing more in taxes, then it allows schools to be able to go out and say, hey, listen, if we're able to cut taxes here or whatever, we need a tax for this levy or that levy. If we have to replace $200 million, there isn't a tax levy that will pass ever in this county.
Not for a while.
Yes.
When? And it's not just a problem for the 12 of us. Because if the 12 of us, or however many counties have a generating plant, go into that catastrophic failure of not being able to have those property taxes and then having the burden passed on to the rest of the property owners in this county,
I can tell you,
who's going to move to Lake County?
I've talked to a couple of the folks in a couple of the small rural counties that have a big power plant.
Right.
It's
It's crippling.
like a Lawrence County, right? Like they're very poor, right? They don't have a lot of dollars. That plant generates a lot of money for their sheriff, their county, that local school district. Like, that's it, right?
Drive down the
It
Ohio
would, it
River.
would really be painful for Lake County, right? For some of these small counties,
That's one of the business.
it
And
would
we-
just be like, man, why don't you just,
And we have to be
shovel
aware the
dirt on their grave?
state is looking to withdraw further money back out of our own communities here. As an example, in the change in legislation on marijuana dispensaries, where part of that tax money went back to Wickliffe or to Painesville Township. They're talking about, you're not getting that money, the state's going to get all that. That further affects our communities. There is a movement by the state to take all this money, and they already took local government years ago, to just continue to withdraw it and impact our services. So I think it's something we have to be aware of.
If Lake County's property taxes double, why would you move to Lake County? And if I lived here,
Well,
why-
I won't double, but they're gonna go up. I mean,
okay.
I don't want to be. I don't want to.
If they go up 10%, if they go up 20%,
Yeah, I mean,
if they
it's
go up
gonna be
30%,
an increase.
we 30%. We just had this argument, no offense, on the sales tax, right? We have a lower sales tax than Cuyahoga and the other counties, and it was attractive to bring people here, right? Our taxes are, we pay a little bit higher than the other areas, and that's why our home values are higher, right? We have more services here than our neighboring counties. Well, now all of a sudden, if our taxes are astronomically higher, well, guess what? People are going to move. They're going to move to Jaga. They're going to move to Ashtabula. They're going to move back to Cuyahoga because these people don't have as high property taxes. And those counties then are going to have their issues.
Yes.
Right? You're going to need more infrastructure and policing in Geauga or Ashtabula because all of a sudden you get the wave of population that moved from Cuyahoga east is just going to keep shifting down I-90.
And by the way, what county, what school district, what city is going to be dumb enough to approve a power plant that's exempt from taxes? You're going to be there creating all the burdens of every other taxpayer and a lot of unique risks. Having a nuclear power plant in your county requires you to engage in a lot of safety protocols and expenses that you wouldn't otherwise have. What county, what community would be dumb enough with their home rule to approve the construction of a new power plant
Well,
that's
I-
not going to be pulling its weight?
I would suggest to you that probably, and again, I haven't gotten through this whole bill, but it doesn't mean the state won't just strip away your ability as a local community to have any say over a power plant.
That's lovely.
So
I mean, if you're gonna build power plants, I mean, there are definitely in certain places there's going to be NIMBYism, right? So, from a state standpoint, if you want to build a bunch of power plants, you're going to have to figure out a way to go, and they're exempt from local zoning rules, right? I mean, you'll never get to your
And that
point.
tax
You probably
base-
never get one built.
That tax base also affects our ability for service. We had to move our communication center 10 miles out of the radius and increase our radios and all those impact. And years ago, the power plant was funding a lot of that, and now they're not. And so it does affect Lake County as a whole into where our general fund money goes.
Thank you, Sheriff. Very well said.
Want to hear from Perry? Perry?
Tom, come on up.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and I really appreciate the conversation, and thank you, Mr. Galloway, for asking us to come in and be a seat at the table. It's a long story, the Perry Local Schools and the relationship with the Perry Nuclear Power Plant. Obviously when, they agreed to have this very expensive piece of property built in their wonderful community, they also agreed that any other chance of economic development was over. Nobody's building around a nuclear power plant. And while some of the fears that were present back in the early 80s and that with the meltdown through Mile Island and all those things that are still there might have been forgotten a little bit, but it's real. And thank you, Sheriff Leon-Bruno, for talking about our safety forces. What our fire folks do out there in preparation of those terrible, tragic potential events is spectacular. And the fact that they've lost funding and the ability to be prepared the way they need to be prepared in the event of anything like that happening. But back in the day when Perry agreed to that and Lake County was involved in that, remember, our financial troubles were over. And for a while, that was true. And then dereg happened, and a lot of what this is reminds me very much of the phase out of tangible personal property tax, shifting over to CAT tax, and the kilowatt tax, which never came back to us, right? And so, but in the end, I know this is early in the stages, and we've elected our representatives. And they're there to, govern for us. And I got a call from Representative Callender when this was dropped to give us a heads up that this could potentially be devastating to this area. And he's concerned. And he's working on finance there. And I have not talked with Senator Serino yet about the Senate bill version. But as that gets, and I think that has been proposed, and don't quote me here, but there may be already some language out there that's holding or grandfathering existing power plants from this relief. Not sure. But we've been through a lot of issues, and we're appreciative of our representatives. And so, as we go and we build, a coalition to message and make sure that our voice is heard, I also want to make sure that we're speaking with Representative Callender, we're speaking with Senator Serino, and we're listening to what their responses are before we jump the gun, because they've supported us in the past in ways that have pulled us out of some of these issues. And so again, I appreciate the work. The level of devastation that having a tax exempt nuclear power plant would be millions and millions and millions of dollars that we would, you're right, have to seek elsewhere on the backs of residents. That is an anomaly in our district, because the level of affluency in Perry schools does not match the level of revenue that one Perry nuclear plant could bring in. Unlike Cuyahoga County, unlike Franklin County, whereas they build affluency in their business and those things, and it continues to grow, it kind of matches the residency of the people. Not so here. And so again, I appreciate your efforts. And again, I still hold hope that Senator Serino and Representative Callender will carry our message, and then we'll be down there to testify and make sure our voices are heard. So again, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll be along for the ride.
Thank you. I do want to say one thing. I mean, any change to the legislation that obviously grandfathered existing plants would be huge for us. I mean, obviously that's one bullet dodged, if you will. I would suggest that we would, even if that were to come to pass, we want to continue to fight the idea of the new ones being so. And somebody might say, well, Chris, what does it matter at that point? Well, here's why. We are entering an era where there's no way around the fact that, and I think it's more likely now than ever, that the Trump administration will approve new nuclear plants, right? There's a lot of new technology since the 1970s. They can make small little plants that exist on like 5 acres.
Modular reactors.
Yep, and they're building one out in Montana right now, I think. Or they're about to start one or something. So the technology out there on these things is really fantastic. But if people want to think about it, if you're going to build, let's say Ohio says, yeah, we're going to build 5 new nuke plants in Ohio, right? Where are they going to put them? You're going to build one in Perry. You're going to build the second plant where you already have the infrastructure, Perry, where they already have the security, where they already have the land, where they already have the expertise on running a nuclear plant, where they already have the waste stored. You're not going to put one in Geauga County. You're going to put it where it's already can tie right into the grid that already exists, right? You're going to put one out by Davis-Besse, right? There's 2. Now maybe you've got to find new locations for some of them. But if you're going to build, say, 5 nuke plants, one of them you're going to want to put right in Perry. That would be a second plant potentially generating more local revenue for this county. So to make that tax exempt, why would we want that, right? Why would we want to shift the tax onto the infrastructure and give those tax dollars to Cuyahoga, Franklin, Lucas, Summit, well, that plant sits there exempt. It doesn't make any sense. So,
Any other industries that are tax exempt like this?
well, I mean, look, whenever the state engages like an Intel, right, to come in and build a $2 billion plant, or you have the $4 billion, what is it, Jason, the one in Pickaway, the drone manufacturer. It's like going to be the largest economic development project in the history of the country. They're going to build like a $4 billion military drone plant in Pickaway County. I have no doubt that they have given all kinds of tax exemptions to get them to come in and build that thing. Now, they're not indefinite, right?
Right.
You know, I don't know if the state has negotiated away Pickaway County's property taxes. I doubt they did, but they probably gave them lots of other tax incentives, right?
Right. Temporary.
And that's their argument, I think, on these power plants. Well, it's just like any other industry. You want us to build it, and we got to get some.
This is written into the ORC.
Right.
Permanent.
That's what we don't want to do.
And no offense, a nuclear power plant comes with other issues than a factory. Am I incorrect in that statement?
Well, I mean, it could, although I would argue that nuclear power is very, very safe.
Sure. But we just had the sheriff talk, and we just had the folks from the schools. It requires additional fire training.
Absolutely.
And to Commissioner Pleshnik's point, it adds a burden to the community, which is fine. Okay. That's an investment from the community, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship, right? Until the burden comes on the community, but there's no resources to help pay for that extra burden. Other than more taxes on the people in the community.
And that's the big difference between an Intel or a Pickaway County drone factory versus what's being proposed here. It's one thing for the state to allocate state dollars from their budget to give an incentive. It's another thing for the state to give away local dollars to incentivize economic development. That is forcing localities to pay the price for your investment. You're not cutting your budget to find the resources. You're asking everyone else. You're asking the school district, the city, the village to make that sacrifice. And that's not right. Because ultimately, you're not weighing whether it's even something the community can afford. It's literally John Kasich's strategy for balancing the state budget. I'm not going to cut anything. I'm just going to throw it all on localities and hope they find a way. And unlike the past where school districts and cities saw there was room to pass levies and raise taxes to make up the gap for what John Kasich shoved on them, there is no room now. There is no room for property taxes to go up. Levies are not going to be passing in a community that's seen 30% valuation increases. It's just not going to happen. So saying to localities, we're going to take away all your revenue, go find some more. I mean, you may as well just start panning for gold in the Grand River and hope you strike it rich, because there's no more property taxes to take. It's time to start giving some back. We can't ask for more.
Could I ask two questions?
Yeah.
What's the timeline or process?
It's
Been
got to be quick,
introduced-
in my opinion.
What's that?
I think we have to move quick. I think as soon as Jason and I have an understanding of where the plants are, we need to reach out and probably have some sort of a work session Zoom with the other school districts, the other counties, the other fire districts and sheriffs and whatnot in those counties and those communities, and we need to get organized so we have a strategy on when these start having hearings in the House committee to get ourselves down there with our, and not only just us. We need our residents to go with us, right? We need, Joe Bag of Donuts, right, to come with us, because that is actually in many ways a stronger voice, right? They hear from us all the time. But if we bring our residents to say, whoa, what are you going to do to us?
And to be clear, there's 132 lawmakers in Columbus,
There are 132.
and they're all up for re-election in 2026 or 2028.
Not all of
correct?
them. There's a handful of senators that aren't, but yeah, most of them
By
are.
2028 they are.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yes.
Within the next two cycles.
Within
yes,
the next
they're
two
all
cycles.
Up. Yeah, they're all up.
Just want to.
I think, we have to get the word out to the local leaders immediately.
Yep.
Because I'm sure that, I haven't heard any rumblings or anything from any of them about.
Well, we have our mayors and managers meeting.
Right.
Again, it's so new, it's so quick
Yeah.
that, I learned of this 1 week ago.
And
So-
the biggest I've ever seen a tax exempt is 15 years. North Olmsted just lost Moen to Chicago, where they gave them 100% tax abatement to move there. And I'll argue you that's not a company you want in your yard anyway, because if they're not willing to participate in the community, and every 15 years they can turn around and move again.
Yeah.
They can afford to do that and not, and by not paying taxes to locals. So,
You touch on a very important thing, which is, is the corporate citizenship and wanting those that are here. This is actually another topic that I'll probably bring up probably in our Turk meeting, Jason, that we've got coming up in March. I know Commissioner Beveridge is well plugged into, some of the nonprofit stuff, but, for and again, I'm shifting gears slightly on your point.
yeah.
We've been blessed in Lake County for a long time to have a lot of good corporate folks that built their businesses here, grew their businesses here, supported our local nonprofits, supported our local schools, did a lot of that. You have a lot of shifting with corporate, corporations being gobbled up by bigger corporations. They're nationalized, they're globalized, whatnot. And something that I've seen in talking to nonprofit folks is that, in our county is that, we used to have all these companies that would do, charitable donating, payroll deduction, all the rest of these things to locals, right? Because they were local CEOs that were here. They were on the boards of these nonprofits. They were engaged in the community. Now what we see is a lot of these big companies that are happy to come to us in a Turk meeting and want all their tax reductions and want our dollars and want our support. And we want them here, right? We want those jobs here. That's why we do it, right? But then what we're seeing in the last 2 years is those same corporate leaders aren't from here anymore. They're flown in from Iowa, from the new big global headquarters. They don't care about Lake County. Guess what's happening with all those nonprofit donations and donations to schools and youth sports? It's drying up. We're a global company. We give globally, right? Well, I don't care. Bangladesh isn't subsidizing your plant on the west end of Lake County, right? We want you to be a good corporate citizen to be here and supporting our folks that need help here in this community, right? It has to be a good symbiotic relationship. And so, that's a whole other ball of wax and a challenge, right? That they've got their own marching orders from Texas and California or wherever, or Tokyo or whatnot, or Omaha. And they're not supporting our local nonprofits anymore, right? And guess what that's doing? That's pushing another shift back onto you all. You all have to figure out ways to fund more 211 and other stuff, that more public tax dollars, because the charitable giving isn't there. Why? Because the same companies that used to be great corporate partners, not really anymore. Now it's all excuses. Well, we're a global company, we're not a Lake County company. Well, that's nice. It's Lake County that's supporting your business. That's where those are your workers. Those are your kids that are in youth sports, in schools. You have a plant here, a major plant. Maybe that charitable giving should be local, not global. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. I apologize for that tangent, but you brought it up and it sort of triggered in my mind that's a whole other future conversation.
It just seems to be like the what's happening in the political level and on the private level is, everything's getting shifted back to the burden of the locality.
Correct.
And it just, just more and more every day. So
it shifts back to our local taxpayers constantly getting more put on their back. And it's hard. It's really hard. And at some point, there's no more runway, right? So we as elected officials, it's our job to go and fight as best we can.
Well, to that point, I'm gratified to hear that State Rep Jamie Callender has already reached out to Perry Public Schools. In my experience, he's been a watchdog for us and a powerful advocate. But looking to the General Assembly generally, it's hardly a favor to introduce damning legislation that can destroy a community and go, we'll think about fixing it. Well, you're creating the problem, and then you want to be thanked if you'll consider fixing it. These folks are supposed to be making life better in Lake County and all of Ohio. They're not supposed to create massive problems and then try to fix it. And while I know that Jamie has been the strongest advocate to keep the power plant and to make sure that it pays its taxes in Lake County, so no one can criticize Jamie for his record on his advocacy for us, we can criticize the Ohio General Assembly for even proposing something this nonsensical. To have the gall to propose this and go, well, maybe we'll fix it. Come on. You know, what are we electing you for? We'd be better off if you didn't exist. All the folks who work so hard electing these people to make our lives better, and they come up with nonsense that we need to rally the troops to fight to reduce. I think everyone is about tired of this stuff. It's just a constant string of ill thought out proposals because someone wants to say, I voted for energy. I voted for economic development. I voted for good things. Well, congratulations. You voted for a 40-page omnibus bill you didn't even read before you proposed it. And we hope to God that it gets fixed before it ultimately gets passed. My goodness, this is not what the state legislature was meant to do. These folks should be writing their own bills after talking to their own constituents to make sure that it will improve the lives of the people they represent, rather than copying and pasting from a lobbyist. You know, I'll take someone else's favorite line. Everybody's got a lobbyist except for the citizens.
Well, we will definitely want to engage Mr. Dirtle, your lobbyist, which I think you guys have already talked about. The last thing I would point out is that they will argue that they're just going to shift the burden to the transmission and distribution network. Okay. Yes, the urban counties they're going to gain money. However, the problem with that result is, I have sitting down on my desk the appeals that were just filed on those very personal property tax assessments, because they're self-reporting. Under the current law, they get to self-report that stuff. First Energy and American Transmission, again, which is First Energy, just sent in to taxation. I got the notice that they are looking to reduce around the state where they have their infrastructure, the value of all that, they want it reduced by over $88 million. So, yeah, you're going to shift the tax onto the thing that the utilities are busy trying to devalue, so you can increase the percentage of the tax. But if then, on the other hand, you're letting them self-report the value and dramatically reduce it, you're just getting a slightly higher percentage of a shrinking pie. What have you done, right? You're not helping anything. So, anyway, I appreciate the time. Like I said, I love the new format. I love being able to discuss these things with you guys. When these things come up, it's great to be able to do this in an open work session like this. I just can't applaud you guys enough for it. That's all I think I've got on House Bill 15. Jason, anything to?
No, I thank the auditor as well. I have reached out to Mr. Dirtle this morning after some earlier discussions. I think he and I are getting together first of the week. I've also, as the auditor indicated, reached out to the County Commissioner Association on their analysis, if they have anything yet, and requested a list of potential impacted counties. So once we gather that, thank you to the sheriff. I hadn't thought of the public safety side that's new in the game, so I'll continue to work with the auditor and keep you guys informed throughout the next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Auditor. And if there's anything else from the floor, anybody else? Mr. Massey.
Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive, lobbyist for citizens. Several months ago with the prior commission, commissioners kind Commissioner Plechnik had a proposed resolution that basically was going to ask the state legislators to do something immediately for the seniors in Lake County, because we've been saying this for many years now, that we stay on this path of ever increasing property taxes. We're going to price seniors out of their homes. The prior commissioners did not want to support Commissioner Plechnik, so I'm here to ask Commissioner Rejovic and Commissioner Beveridge to reconsider the proposal and support Commissioner Plechnik. I know that it has no standing, but what the people are looking for, they are looking for support from the commissioners. We are not getting meetings with Jerry Serino, Jamie Callender, or Dan Troy, so we're having to go out to other representatives throughout the state, and we are also talking to many different groups throughout the state. In the next month, we'll be talking to 5 different groups throughout the state. So we're going to keep the emphasis on these property taxes. I think you all understand it now. And, I was talking about this thanks to Auditor Galloway, who gave me a heads up over a year ago. And I was trying to tell people, they didn't believe me. They wanted to believe the comforting lies. They didn't want the unpleasant truths. So I'm here to ask you to consider supporting Commissioner Plechnik's resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As I said before, I applaud your effort and your desire. We agree on that. I don't know that we agree 100% on the policy, and so therefore I'm not going to sit down and sign off. I think that we need to come up with something actionable immediately that can be delivered to our state reps and say, you could put this on the floor and vote on this now.
Gentlemen, would you allow me to send you my thoughts on all that?
Absolutely.
I have a full punch list that's been vetted by the Auditors Association on property tax reform that we are pushing. I think that I agree with you and Commissioner Plechnik that John and I have debated his approach. But I think that there are definitely some elements that there can be the common ground everybody can get behind, right? And I've got a whole punch list on those, and if you would allow me, I'll send them to you for your consideration in doing some sort of a resolution.
I would just like to see
And
something.
again, these are things that have been vetted by the Auditors Association because we know they'll work, and they're things that we know that the legislature can actually implement, right? I mean, with all due respect to Commissioner Plechnik, I mean, he is passionate on this issue, which I totally respect. The legislature is not going to exempt anyone over 65 from taxes, right? They're not doing it.
But they'll consider exempting power plants.
I'm with you on this, but it's they're not going to do that. So why don't we come up with a resolution of things that we think they're more likely to listen to? If we throw out stuff that's not going to go anywhere,
Right.
then it doesn't give any real
It can be
teeth to the
dismissed.
resolution.
But
right?
if
They
it's
just-
something
they look at it,
legitimately that
laugh,
can be
and throw it
considered,
away.
correct. If it's
Right.
something legitimate, then other people go, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
And
So
John,
with your permission, I'll send you what the auditors have come up with.
I'd love to see that anyway,
I was
yeah.
actually writing an op-ed piece for the News Herald. I was going to put it out. We're starting a media tour, the auditors around the state, to push these very things that they need to happen. There are things they can do right now in the state budget that would give our taxpayers relief.
John, that's the insanity. Your statement is correct. They would never in a million years pass a full exemption for anybody over the age of 65. But they will for power plants that generate power, right? And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. That topic specifically, I understand the burden on senior citizens, and I understand the taxes going up. And I've been here 6 weeks, and I've already started having these fight conversations of trying to help folks out. I would like to see something on a means testing, so to speak, right? Where, no offense, but the 70-year-old who has the 401k and has the means and has the ability to pay their property taxes and has benefited, from the education of the schools and everything else, I would like to see them continue to pay taxes.
I would say the senior citizen in Jerry Serino's income bracket doesn't need that kind of help. I
So
get
carve
it.
that out.
However, $40,000 roughly is the homestead exemption. $40,000
That's
of
it,
income
that's
is
your
not
income, that is your
is not
threshold.
fair.
It's not high.
It's not right. I'm sorry, but by the time you've paid for your medication, you're deciding whether or not to buy food for yourself or your dog.
And that is one of the auditor proposals, that the income amount has to be increased. $40,000 for this year. It's just not, and that's adjusted. We finally got them to start moving it up.
And by the
with
way, if
inflation.
40,000 is enough to live on, then the state reps and senators should cut their pay to $40,000 and agree to take no other positions on and see how that works out for them. I think they'd find a hard time paying their bills like our seniors do.
Well, and I would say this. I think that it's important to remember that it's $40,000 in income that exempts your Social Security. So it doesn't include your Social Security. So your income could be higher than that. Now, to your point, it's not high enough. It isn't high enough. We've pounded the desk with the legislature on this for forever and a day. Again, that was a change that Kasich made and the legislature approved in the 2012 budget. There didn't used to be an income litmus test, right? If you made $200,000 a year and you were over 65, you got the homestead exemption. To your point, they balanced the budget on locals' backs. That's how Kasich did it. He explicitly said, I'm pushing the tax burden back onto the local taxpayers because I want them to understand how much everything they want actually costs, right? That was his philosophy, right? And the legislature signed off on it.
No, his philosophy was spending our money and then asking us to say thank you.
Well, but okay, there were a lot of different things there, right? But the legislature signed off on it. They voted to say yes to balance the state budget and to put an income cap on those that were eligible for homestead. Now, the people that were already there, they got grandfathered. It just meant that going forward, new people that turn 65 today and call my office and find out, oh, I made $48,000 last year, was my number. I'm not eligible,
If you could please send that stuff up, Commissioner Pleshnik, I'm more than happy to work with you and Commissioner Rakovich on something concrete and actionable that folks can get behind and can be put into law immediately. And you and I can rotate turns driving down to Columbus and knocking on doors once a week. I'm more than happy to get in Columbus and demand action. I just want to make sure that when we show up and pound on a door and say, I demand, that it's something that can and should be implemented immediately.
And I think you're right to do that now, because if they are going to implement the things like the auditors have proposed, they're going to do it in the state budget. So, and that's going on right now. That will be finalized by the end of June, if not sooner, right? So the time for us to act on these things is right.
And I view them both as needing to be together.
Yeah.
The House Bill 15 and the other issues. The House Bill 15 shouldn't even be considered. I mean, take out the tax parts. If you want to consider the other things that make energy better to build here, great. But the noise about the two tax adjustments, I just do not see the logic in that whatsoever. That's a no start. That's not even considerable to me. But I do think that if we're going to go down and demand things, that those are both at the same time with the same coalition and then some. And I think that to your point, there may only be 12 or 15 counties that have power plants, but we can build a larger coalition of people that go down and knock on doors if we're bringing up the total topic of tax reform as it relates to property taxes.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I think that's a really good approach.
So it sounds like, Mr. Massey, that we could probably come together on one of those and form something that would work. But you're absolutely right. This is you can see my colleagues are very passionate about. We're all passionate about tax.
Not
in
a day
general.
goes by that my phone isn't blowing up in my emails, MFing me.
Well, I tell them to call you.
I mean, people, and listen, I understand it. Like, it's frustrating, right? I mean, everybody's, I had somebody call me and say, my taxes went up $500. How do you think that's okay? I'm like, well, I don't. But I'm implementing the law, and, you live in Willoughby Eastlake Schools, and you're below the floor.
I wish mine was only 500.
Well, that's what I told him. I go, mine went up 900.
3,000.
Yeah, well, you're, Richie Rich out there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's hard, right? Like, I feel for people. I really do. I mean, it's my staff has. I mean, God bless them. They're on the front line, right? You might get a couple calls. They're calling my office nonstop. They get a hold of me. I want you to review and reduce my taxes. Well, I don't, and that's not how it works, right? Well, I don't care how it works. You got to do it. You're a jerk, Galloway. You're awful, right? Like, well, we're all stuck in that boat, right? It's ORC. It's, we're creatures of statute, as Dan Troy likes to say, and we're doing our best we can, and we just have to continue to advocate for our people as best we can. On the one hand, I got broad shoulders. I can handle getting beat up all over the place on this. I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, I do want to figure out a way to help people.
So
I know our school district friends won't want to hear that one of the solutions the auditors have is to cap the 920 windfalls, but it's got to happen. I mean, Perry's getting 8.8 million. I'm not Perry. Willoughby Eastlake's getting $8.8 extra million because of House Bill 920 unvoted. I mean, that's a substantial amount of money that those voters are getting pummeled. And they're calling my office going, what have you done to me? Well, then I have to sit and explain House Bill 920. And people go, I don't know what any of that is. And so it's,
well, to end where we began, Chad, I think your headline for House Bill 15 is Radioactive Bill Threatens Future of Lake County.
there you go. Wow. And I appreciate Chad sticking around for this work session, because I think the media will play a big role in how we get this word out, right? And when we get our coalition together, are we calling the TV stations? Are we, what's our approach? We have to figure that out. That's a group, it's a collective, how we're going to approach it.
I just got a note from the CCAO now about getting on a call early next week, so I'll talk to you offline.
Awesome.
Maybe a commissioner, just so they want to hear our firsthand. They have not taken a position yet on 15. They're reviewing it.
And for the record, my association hasn't either
Sure.
taken a position. Again, I may have some counties that are fine with it, right? They're going to win.
Yeah.
Right? So we may not take an official position.
So commissioners, when I get that date, I'll take a peek at your calendars, but I want to get on this gentleman's calendar and the auditors as soon as we can. So
Yet another thing for you.
it's fine. It's important.
Okay, anything else from the field? Looks like we covered.
I do want to point out that we do have our since we're talking taxes, if you go to my website, there is a link there to our tax comparison dashboard. That allows, you can all go there, anyone, the public can go there, look at their property, see what their value went up and what the percentage of their taxes went up. And they can compare it to last year. So they can see, oh, my value went up 38%, my taxes went up.
By the way, you should sit down before you pull up your property.
That's how I found out my bad news.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, again, we created that dashboard 3 years ago, and we redid it for the sexennial because I want to put as much information out there for the public, right? I mean, we want them to go there and look at it and to see it, and I've been sending the link to people that send me emails and ask me, and I like, go here and look, go and see your neighborhood, go see your neighbors.
I am amazed on how many homeowners and have been homeowners for a long time do not understand their property tax at all. They literally inside millage, outside millage, and I'll be honest with you, it wasn't until I was elected.
You didn't know either,
Yeah.
right? And the thing you're going to discover when you go down to Columbus and start advocating on these issues,
They don't know either.
none of those representatives and senators, not none, most of them don't have a clue either. They will. I always appreciate the ones I meet with that pull me aside and say, "Can you explain to me what inside millage is?" Like, yes, Senator, I will. Like, they don't know. Which is why we pound the desk as auditors and say, like last year when they had crazy bills and ideas, we're like, don't do this. You don't know what you're doing, and you're going to make 9 other things worse so you can get a headline. Stop, right? And getting them to realize, like, hey, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. Like,
And we took it, all the calls we get, like, it's easy to say, oh, call the auditor's office, but I think we took the time, I know Commissioner Pleshnik did.
no, I know you guys have been talking
And said,
to
look,
taxpayers,
this
too.
is Ohio law, this is why it's happening, but it's not going to be that, it's on a certain millage, it's not on all millage. You had to try and explain that, and so it wasn't until they really got, like, now.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry he left, but I mean, the great example is Brian Massey's, right? I mean, he's here every week talking to you guys about these issues. I handed him his bill. His taxes went down $230. His taxes now, on the increased value and multiple new levies in Concord for fire stations, public safety, and everything, he's paying the same amount in taxes that he was in 2015, 10 years ago. I said to him, I go, tell me something else that's exactly the same cost in the last decade.
Right, that's my
And he,
bad.
and to Brian's credit, he literally was dumbfounded, and he's like, I have to figure out how to process this, right? And I said to him, I go, that's because there are parts of our system that are working in terms of the property taxes. It's not all just completely broken. There are tweaks we can do. But that's a great example of multiple levies have been passed in Concord, and others countywide and other stuff, right?
But then the state rep in Northwest Ohio heard that Brian Massey's taxes went down, and he said, hold my beer,
Yeah,
I can
hold
fix
my
this.
beer. I've got an idea. So, I mean, that's a great example. I mean, I'm actually working on the numbers, and I'm going to get you guys a report. I mean, obviously, as you can see, 10,000 other things come up. So it's like trying to get to certain things. It's like, some days you just feel like you're trying to run up, climb Mount Everest in penny loafers. But, I think about 19% of our taxpayers' taxes went down. About 19%. It's about what I think the number's going to end up being.
I wonder why everybody asked me if I was moving to Concord.
Well, I mean, I can tell you the 2 houses on either side of me, my neighbors, their taxes actually went down slightly. One was like $40, right? Mine went up 900.
So that improvement you did.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, my value went up, and my share of the taxing district pie increased. That's why mine went up, and theirs didn't. So,
Well, if HB 15 passes, we're all going to have to move to live in the nuclear power plant so that we won't have to pay property taxes anymore.
we'll want to live there to stay warm and get electricity.
That's the only way we'll be able to afford it.
So I just point that out about the dashboard, that it's out there. We've tried to put as much information as possible out there. It's always been my mantra, as much transparency as we can. So anybody can go and look and play around with it, and look at taxes and see what their district is, and they can compare their property. They can look at their neighbors if they want. They can, and I think in some ways it's helpful that people realize it's not that, like, they haven't been singled out. Like, it still hurts, right? But for people to understand that, like, I mean, hey, I had a guy that came in our office last week and was like yelling about his taxes, getting all worked up, wants his taxes reduced and everything. And staff calmly tells him, like, well, that's not how it works. Like, if you think our value is wrong, file with the Board of Revision a complaint so that we can review your value. We don't know what's, if your basement is collapsing or something, and he literally was like, well, no, I mean, the value is still low. I could get more for it than that. And was like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Like, what? Like, you just literally are yelling at us about your taxes. So we say, well, I mean, if we've messed up on your value, we can try to fix it. Oh, no, you're still low on the value. Well, okay, please file it, because, by the way, the Board of Revision can raise your value. And, oh, by the way, we've done it. We've had people come in. Well, I will actually say,
Thank you.
We will get a percentage. Honestly, we will get a percentage of people that file BORs. They want their value raised.
Yeah.
It does happen.
That's because they want to sell their house.
Well, for whatever reason their motivations are. I mean, we do have people that will come in and be like, "Oh, you're too low. You need to raise the value of my house." I mean, it is somewhat surprising. I know you probably are surprised, but there's a lot of people that are really just inherently honest. Right? And you get them in there, even if they're trying to get a reduction, and you ask them a question, they'll answer honestly and be like, well, yeah, I did add, a finished basement. Here's the photos. Oh, we didn't know about that. But you know what? They're truthful. They'll come in and they'll be truthful and be like, yeah, you don't have on the property card that my basement's fully finished with a wet bar and a shower, and yeah, we don't have that. That's going to increase your value. Yeah, I thought it might.